So once we've thought through the three different contexts, the historical cultural context, the literary context, and the redemptive context, we then want to begin to dive into the text. And when we think about the text, is what was God saying through the human author to the original audience as it relates to both the content, what was being said and how it was said, and the theology about God and humanity, both fallen and redeemed, of the passage. And so as we think about, again, the text, we want to think about how was God saying what he was saying, what was being said, what was being emphasized, what was being taught, and then we want to check our work. And so the first part of this is we want to think about how was God saying what he was saying. And essentially this is genre. We recognize the fact that we all have to read different genres in different ways. You know intuitively that when you pick up a newspaper, it's different than picking up a novel or different from picking up a love note. And so you're going to read each of those differently. But when we come to the scriptures, we oftentimes kind of ignore genre. And so when we think about the different genres of the scriptures, there are letters or epistles. And this is where most of us cut our teeth when it comes to reading the Bible. Paul's epistles or Peter's epistles or John's epistles. But really, in essence, in all of the scriptures, those letters or those epistles make up just 10% of our entire Bible. The other narrative, the other genre is history or narrative, which makes up 31% of the scriptures. God communicated through story oftentimes. And those stories were meant to draw us in particular ways and to help us to see people and see what God was doing and learn through the power of story. We all love stories, right? We love movies, we love good books. And so, in the same way, God wanted to move us through stories. Another is poetry or wisdom. Again, we oftentimes love poems, and maybe not so much. Maybe when it was in school we had to study them, we didn't love them so much. But poetry does something, at least when we think of songs, right? Songs move us. Songs get into our brains, right? And we're able to sing the lyrics of a song 30 years still after we heard them for the first time. And so poetry and the wisdom literature does something to us. And again, God communicated that way to us for those letters and for that poetry and that wisdom to get inside of us in particular ways. The law, we think of this second half of Exodus, and we think of Leviticus, we think of Deuteronomy. That was, again, God's kind of legal code for his people, the Israelites. This makes up about 10% of our scriptures. The Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which is another particular genre that we need to think about how to read, makes up about 7% of our Bible. And then the prophetic and apocalyptic literature or genre makes up about 22% of our scriptures. In fact, if I were to hold up my Bible here and hold up all the prophetic books in the last portion of the Old Testament, it by page number, it essentially is the same amount of pages as our whole New Testament. But it's often an overlooked portion of our scriptures. But we need to think through how to read those.